What's up guys, this is Eric Vasquez here with a brand new tutorial for you today from designcuts.com. Now in this tutorial we'll be creating an ad for Brasserie Cognac in Photoshop. For this we will be working with a handful of elements from the Creative's Ultimate Vintage Collection, including the Chivel's typeface from AF Studios, decorative elements from Heybing Supply Co, a textured template from Photo Spirit, and a free realistic looking bottle mock-up. This full collection contains a huge assortment of vintage design elements from artists such as Blue Line Design, Paper Farms, Mr. Vintage, Tobias Saul, and many more. So if you're all ready to get started on this tutorial, then fire up Photoshop and let's begin. The first thing we're going to do today is download the free mockup template, and then we're going to open up the first file. It's mockup1.psd. So once you have this file open in Photoshop, we can get started. And the first thing we want to take a look at here is a few unnecessary layers that we can remove from this template file. So all I'm going to do here is click to expand some of these folders just to see what's inside. Now I know that I don't really need this box here or this Shadow 1 folder, and then inside of the BG lighting subfolder we're going to hold the Command Control key and click on Light 1, Light 2, let's grab that box and that shadow so we can get those at the same time, and then let's also go ahead and get rid of Mockup Box 2 and Mockup Box 1. Alright, and then we're just going to hit delete to remove those from the file. So we just want to have the layers in here that we absolutely need. Now once you've done that, go ahead and come inside of this texture subfolder here in the BG folder and just click on that for a second and then hold the Alt Option key and click on the adjustment layer icon all the way down here at the bottom of the layers palette and choose black and white adjustment layer. Go ahead and check off this option that says use previous layer to create clipping mask and click OK. Now we're going to press M on the keyboard to grab our marquee tool, and up here in the top toolbar you'll see that there's an option that says Feather 0 pixels. So I'm going to change that to 5 because I want this selection to be a little bit soft, and then I'm going to select that texture image layer, zoom out a little bit, and now all we're going to do is click and drag to make a selection all the way down here to where the background meets the top of the table. Now from here come up to the Select menu, choose Inverse, and then go ahead and click on the Apply Layer Mask icon at the bottom of the Layers palette. So by feathering that selection, you'll see we have a little bit of a soft edge along the top of that table. We don't want a very hard, stark edge, just because the table kind of fades out a little bit at the top here. Alright, so the next thing we'll do is double click on this BG color, and we'll go ahead and change the hex value here to 272523. Go ahead and click OK. And then click on the adjustment layer icon once again. This time we'll add another black and white adjustment layer, and that's all we need to do there. So now I'm just going to zoom out a little bit. I'm going to press C on the keyboard to get my crop tool, and then I just want to drag in some of these handles so that we can crop this mock-up a little bit more. Alright, I want to keep the focus primarily on the bottle here, and there's a lot of kind of unnecessary space on the other sides. So all we're going to do is just crop that and try and get a better looking result here so that we can keep the focus on the center of the bottle. Okay, maybe somewhere about there. And you can use these guides to help you along the way so that you can still kind of make sure that everything is in the center. And for the bottom here, I want to place that crop mark just above that top edge of the table that's facing forward. And then go ahead and press Return or Enter to apply the changes. Now, press V to go back to your selection tool. You can zoom in again if you want. And now let's go to File, Open, and we can begin working with some of the freebies for this tutorial. Now inside of this freebies folder here, we're going to select the Photo Spirit folder and then choose the Wet Plate Template PSD and click Open. Now this is a pretty cool template that you guys can use, and you can drop photos into this and it just gives it a nice vintage weathered kind of feel. So it's a very useful and handy template with a lot of cool options for customization. Okay, so once you have the Wet Plate template open, we're going to select the top sepia effect layer, hold the Shift key and select the contrast effect layer because those are the only ones that we need right now. Now press V on the keyboard, select those folders, and then hold Command and Shift and drag and drop them into your mockup. Now it may take a moment or two just to drop everything in here, but once we have it in here we can then go ahead and press Command Control G to put them all into a group folder. And then let's double click on the group 1 text and call this Wet Plate. Okay, now we're going to place this behind the base subfolder here, but above the background, the BG folder. All right, so your layer structure should look like this: BG, wet plate, base, master adjustments. You can see what's going on there. Now let's select that wet plate folder, press Command-Control-T to do a free transform, and then zoom out a little bit just so that we can scale this up, because we need to make it just a bit larger. All right, because I don't want to see the top and bottom edges here in my mockup. All right, so just a little bit more. Somewhere about here looks pretty good, and then go ahead and press return or enter once you're happy with the size and placement of the texture. Now let's go ahead and add a new layer, and then press the letter G on the keyboard to switch over to the gradient tool. Now up here in the top toolbar, you want to make sure that you have a solid to transparent gradient selected, and that we also have a radial gradient. Now, as long as white is your foreground color, just go ahead and click and drag out from the center to create a radial gradient, and then change the blend mode from normal to overlay. All right, we can call this whatever you want, maybe center highlight or something to that effect, and then press Command-Control-J to duplicate it, Command-Control-T to do a free transform, and then drag outwards from any of the four corners of the bounding box while holding Alt, Option, and Shift to scale it up from the center. Now once you've done that, press V to get your selection tool, and then the number 5 just to reduce the opacity of that layer to 50%. All right, so it's a little bit less intense. Now what we're going to do is select the center highlight layer here, hold the Shift key and select this Mockup Bottle Edit Me layer, the one that's highlighted in red, and then press Command-Control-G on the keyboard to put it into a group folder, double-click the Group 1 text, and just call this Mockup. Now we can go ahead and just delete that top layer. And before we move on, I just want to remind you guys to be sure to save this as a file with a different name so you don't just save over the mockup file itself. Now, once you've gone ahead and saved your file, we can continue customizing this a bit by selecting the BG folder, clicking on the adjustment layer icon, and now let's add a solid color adjustment layer. And for this, I want to enter the hex value 9D2D0A, all right, which is this nice kind of fiery burnt orange color. And then let's go ahead and change the blend mode from normal to color and reduce the opacity to about 25 or 30% just to give a kind of reddish tint to our background here. Now if you want, you can also press Command-Control-G to put this into a group folder and just call it Color Overlay. And you can always come back in here and play around with the color a bit more if you wanted to, experiment with some of the tinting type of effects, which is some of the beauty of using adjustment layers. Now let's go ahead and create another new layer. Press G once again to return to the gradient tool. And now go ahead and click on the white, which was our foreground color, so that we can now change it to C3140D. Click OK. And now let's go ahead and click and drag outwards to create another radial gradient. And this time we want it to be at the top of the layers palette, so just go ahead and drag that up, or you can use the keyboard shortcut Command-Control and the right bracket to just manually kind of move it up in the layers palette until it's at the top. Now we're going to change the blend mode here from normal to soft light, and I also want to drop the opacity down to maybe about 75 or 80%. Okay, and then press Command-Control-T to do a free transform, and I'm going to bring it down here at the bottom because I want this to look like a reflection from the liquid inside of this glass bottle, just to add a little bit of realism here. All right, but what I need to do now is mask it so that you don't see this gradient on top of the bottle. We want it to look like it's underneath it or behind it. So come inside of this mockup folder and then go into the base subfolder, choose the bottle folder inside of there, and scroll all the way down here to where you'll see this bottle layer. Now hold the Command-Control key and click on the layer thumbnail icon. Come all the way back up and select the red gradient that we added. And now let's come up to the select menu, choose inverse, and then apply a layer mask. So now you can see that we only see that on the table and around the bottle. And what we can do now is just press B to get our brush tool. Go ahead and scale that up just by holding down the right bracket, and then hold the Shift key and the left bracket together to soften the edges of the brush. Now I'm going to press D to reset my default colors, then X to make sure that black is the foreground color, and then press the number 3 on the keyboard to reduce the opacity of that brush to about 30%, which you can see up here. So you want a large, soft, round brush with a low opacity painting with black into this mask here so that we can now hide some of this red on the sides of the bottle. Okay, just like that, and you can see what it's doing inside of the mask here as you paint. And if you want to bring that back in at any point, you can do so just by painting with white instead. Alright, so we just wanted to soften that up a little bit just so that it looks a little bit more natural. Now I'll go ahead and put this into a group folder here and just call it color reflection. Alright, and then close that just to keep things nice and neat here. And then let's add a curves adjustment layer to the very top of our layers palette. Now I'm going to bring the properties panel over here just so we can get a better look at the settings. And we just need to add a point in the middle of the grid here. Okay, and I'm going to set the input to 114, and for the output we can put in 142. Alright, and then close that. And now you can see that we're just kind of brightening this up a little bit, but it's a little bit too much, so I'm going to press 5 to reduce the opacity, kind of split the difference there so it's at 50%, and that's looking pretty good. Now come up to the File menu and choose Place Embedded, and now we're going to navigate to our freebies. Alright, and this time we'll come into the Heybing Supply Co folder, and we want to grab this border from the Java Heritages collection, which in the full bundle comes with a really beautiful typeface and a lot of extra ornaments and things like that. But for now, and in this tutorial, we're just going to be using a border and another really nice ornament. Alright, so once we've placed this in here, let's go ahead and hold the Control key and click on it and choose Rotate 90 degrees clockwise. Move it up here to the top left corner. Okay, and then we're going to just click and drag downwards while holding the Shift key to scale this up. Alright, now depending on exactly how you cropped your document, it may not fit perfectly, so we're probably going to need to make a couple of small tweaks to this, but it's really not a big deal. Okay, because we want to leave a little bit of room on the top, the bottom, all the edges, so that our border can be a little bit inset from the edge. So what we're going to do first, though, is double click on this once we've placed it, apply a color overlay from the layer style dialog box here, and for the fill color, we want to use E6E 586, right, which is this nice kind of vibrant but pale yellow, and then go ahead and click OK. So now we can kind of see that border much better than before, and I just want to place that below my curves adjustment layer. Okay, and now what we can do though is press the letter M on the keyboard, and now let's change the feather up here that we used earlier to 0, just to change that back. And now click and drag with your marquee tool around most of the border, stopping just short of this little kind of curly part here on the right side. And then once you've made your selection, click on the Add Layer Mask icon, okay, so that we can mask that side. Now press the letter V, then Command-Control-J to duplicate it, Command-Control-T to apply a free transform, hold the Control key, click on the border, and choose Flip Horizontal. And now we can press Return to apply the changes. And I'm going to hold the Shift key and just tap to the left a few times until I have an even amount of space on that side. Alright, so we now have a border that fits nicely in here. So select the top copy, hold the Shift key and select the copy below, press Command-Control-G to put it into a group folder, and then double-click that text to rename this folder Border. Okay, now we're going to add another new layer. Press T on the keyboard to switch over to the Type tool, and then I'm going to click my cursor in here and type out in all caps, the finest cognac in France. Now for this I'm going to press Command-Control-A to highlight all of the text, and let me just bring over my character panel, where if you guys don't have this, you can access it just by coming up to Window and then choosing Character. And all we're going to do here is choose a bold condensed typeface, so I'm going to use variable concept. I believe it's called Acumen Variable Concept. Okay, and I'm going to choose a more of a bold but condensed typeface here. All right, extra condensed bold, not bold italic. But for this, you guys can use any free, sans serif condensed bold typeface that you have. Just something that's clean and easy to read. All right, but let's go ahead and change the size here to about 40 point. And then let's also make the tracking setting 45. Click on the fill color here and change it to E6E 586 so that it matches our border. All right, go ahead and click on your move tool there. And now we're just going to kind of place this in the center. Press T to get your type tool and click inside to highlight the entire line of text. And once you've done that, click on this icon at the top toolbar here that says Create Warped Text. Now we're going to change the style to arc, leave it at horizontal, and then let's apply a value of about 35%, and then click OK. Now we're just going to slide this down a little bit, and I think we may need to reduce the size a little bit here as well. So let's just press Command-Control-T, hold the Alt, Option, and Shift keys, and then scale inwards. Just dragging in a bit. Right, somewhere about there looks pretty good. Okay, again, it depends on how tightly you crop the sides there. You may need to adjust the size of this headline a little bit. So while you have that text layer still selected, press Command-Control-G to put it into a folder, double-click the Group 1 text, and then call that headline. So at this point, we have our mockup set up, and we are ready to go in here and customize our label. So before you do that, just make sure to save your work again. Okay, so at this point we can come into the mockup folder here, and we're just going to double click on this first red smart object layer that says mockup bottle edit me. Now once you've done that, you notice that we will be now inside of a separate window where we can begin customizing our label. So to start, I'm going to click on the adjustment layer icon and add a solid color adjustment layer, and for the hex value let's type out 3B0910, which is this nice kind of wine color here. Okay, and then I'm going to just grab that tab, move it to the side here, move my characters panel out of the way, and then put my mockup kind of off to the side here. Now what I want to do is grab this border folder from the main mockup and click and drag it over here into the mockup label. Okay, so once you've done that, you can press F on the keyboard just to change your screen view. Press the space bar to grab your hand and kind of navigate around. And now press Command-Control-T with that border folder selected. Hold the Control key and click on it, and choose Rotate 90 degrees clockwise. So now we want to change the orientation so that it's once again in a horizontal format as it was originally. Okay, but we have to do the same thing here. We're going to have to adjust this a little bit just so that we can make it fit nicely within our design. So I think what I'm going to do first here is make it fit vertically. Okay, and then we're just going to move it over to either the left or the right side. It doesn't really matter as long as we can see one end of it. Okay, so I'm just going to hold the Shift key and tap to the right a couple of times. Right, somewhere about there, looks pretty good. And now with that folder selected, I will press Command-Control-E on the keyboard to merge it together. Now I'm going to make a selection here just around the middle and grab this middle ornament here. Use the spacebar to kind of slide over while you have your selection to move it around. And what I'm going to do is press Command-Control-X to cut it, and then press Command-Control-Shift and V to paste it in place. But you'll notice that now it's on a separate layer, so you can hold the Shift key and kind of tap it over just to get it roughly in the center there. Now what we can do from this point is select both of those layers while holding the Command-Control key, press Command-Control-E to merge them together. And now I'm just going to drag a selection around the left side and delete it. Okay, and now I will do the same thing here where I make a selection around the right side, just up to about the middle. And this time press Command-Control-J to duplicate that selection and place it on a new layer. Command-Control-T to do a free transform. Hold the Control key, click on the border, and choose Flip Horizontal. Alright, so hopefully I wasn't going too fast there for you guys. It's pretty straightforward. You just have to kind of cut it into pieces and make it fit without stretching it, because we don't want to just stretch this and mess up some of these nice intricate details. So once you've done that, you have the border. You can just throw it into a new folder and call it border, or merge the layers together, however you want to do it. Now once you've done that and put it in a folder, double click on it, and we'll now add a color overlay using the hex value CE9F20. Right, and then go ahead and click OK. So that's more of a gold color that we're going to be using here on the dark red. And once you've done that, go ahead and create a new layer. Drag your character panel over here to the side. Press T to get your type tool and click inside of your label. And now we're going to type out Cognac in upper and lower case. Then press Command-Control-A to select all. And over here in the character panel, let's go ahead and change this to the Chivel base typeface here. All right, and as you can see, there are several other styles which are available in the full bundle, but for today we're just going to be focusing on working with the base. All right, and now what we're going to do is click on the color, and let's enter the same hex value for this. So we'll go with CE9F20 so that it matches the border. And for the size, let's go ahead and make this about 116 point with a tracking setting of -20, just to bring those letters a little bit closer together. Right, and then you can just click on your move tool there and place it roughly in the center. Now, once we've done that, we want to hold the control key and click on that layer and convert it to a smart object. All right, then press Command Control J to duplicate it, and then Command Control in the left bracket to move that copy below the original. And now double click on this layer and apply a color overlay with a different fill color. Now for this, what we're going to do is fill it with the hex value 250408, which is this even darker red color. And you guys will understand why I'm doing this in just a moment. Just go ahead and click OK. So you now have your top copy here filled with gold, and you have the deep red copy behind it. So at this point, what we want to do is come up to the window menu and choose Actions. And I'm just going to remove this and start over, but we're going to create a quick custom action here. And this is one that I like to use a lot because it creates a cool kind of 3D effect. So all we're going to do here is click on this icon to create a new action, and I'll just call it Extrude. And then we can go ahead and click Record. Now, once you click Record, it's basically just recording your actions here, and there's only going to be a couple of them. So with your copy, with the Smart Object Copy selected, press Command Control J to duplicate it, Command Control in the left bracket to move it behind the previous copy, and then tap the down arrow once and the right arrow once, and then go ahead and click on Stop. Alright, so it's a very basic action. All we did is create a copy, move it below the original, and then offset it by 1 pixel to the bottom and 1 pixel to the right. So now that we've done that, we can select this extrude action and just keep clicking play until we have about maybe 34, 35 copies. And you can see as I'm doing that it's creating this cool long shadow effect. Now once you have 35 copies, select the very bottom copy, scroll up, hold the Shift key, and click on our first copy. Press Command Control G to put it into a group folder, double click the Group 1 text, and let's just go ahead and call this Extruded. Alright, now we can go ahead and close our action panel. We don't need that anymore. But what we're going to do is double click on that extruded folder now, add a stroke of 8 pixels to the outside, and we're going to fill it with that same color that we used for the fill here on our shadow. So that was the hex value 250408, and then go ahead and click OK. So we've now added a stroke around the letters with a long drop shadow. So from here what I want to do is double click on the original copy, this top copy here filled with gold, and we're going to apply some layer styles to this as well. So now let's go ahead and check off the bevel and emboss here at the very top, and we're just going to check a few settings. We want to make sure that the style is set to inner bevel. You want the technique to be chisel hard. For the depth, we'll set it to 969%. The direction should be up. The size should be 250, soften all the way at 0. Check the shading to make sure the angle is at 30, and we're using global light. We have a anti-alias box that is checked off. The highlight mode should be set to screen, and we'll be using the fill color from earlier on, which was EAE994. Alright, and then for the shadow mode, we want to set that all the way to 0%, and then click OK. Alright, and there you go. Now we have a very nice looking bevel effect happening in our text. So just by playing around with some of those settings, you can get some pretty cool looking results. Now I'll go ahead and create another new layer, press T on the keyboard to get my type tool, and then click, and this time I'm going to go back to that typeface that we were using earlier, which was the Acumen variable concept. Okay, and we want to make sure that we're using that same bold or extra bold condensed, okay, from earlier on. And I'm just going to type out aged in oak barrels. Press Command Control A to select it all. And now we'll change the size to 15 point. And let's also go ahead and change the tracking setting to about 425 so that it's nice and spaced out. Okay, now I'm just going to tap that down a little bit, move my properties panel over here, and then press U on the keyboard. Now, once you do that, we are switching over to our shape tool, okay, the rectangle tool. And if you look at the top toolbar here, you'll see that you have no fill color and you have a stroke. So go ahead and click on that stroke color. Click on this box in the upper right here, the color picker. And now for that, let's just go ahead and make sure that we're using the same color. So we're going to type in the hex value again, CE9F20. Click OK. And now all we're going to do is click and drag out a rectangle around this text at the bottom here. Alright, so we have this nice 4-pixel stroke going around our subhead. Okay, and you can put those two into a folder if you like. Just call it subhead. Alright, and we have our main Cognac text here, so let's grab the Cognac Smart Object, hold Shift and select the extruded group folder beneath, press Command-Control-G, and we'll just call this Cognac. Alright, and now we have our new layer here, so go ahead and press T. And this time, let's go ahead and type out Brasserie in all uppercase using that same typeface. Select the whole line of text here, and this line we're going to make a bit larger. So let's make this about 38 point, and we can also bring the tracking down a bit. Maybe we'll lower this to around 180. Okay, and you can leave the fill color the same. Now, before you deselect this, we're going to come back up here to this icon at the very top to create warped text, and we're going to apply another arc style with a horizontal bend of about 31%. Click on the Move tool, and we can now just kind of bring this down, tap it down a few times like that, so that it's nice and centered. Okay, now let's come up to the File menu and choose Place Embedded, and we're going to be working with that ornament that I mentioned before from Heybing Supply Co. So go ahead and select that. That's the Java Heritages Ornament 24 PSD, and then just choose Place. Now we're going to scale it down by dragging inwards while holding the Shift key, just to constrain the proportions, and place it along the right side of the Brasserie text. Now, once you've done that, hold the Control key and click on it, and choose Flip Horizontal to turn it the other way. Okay, and now let's go ahead and double click on that to bring up the layer styles, check off Color Overlay, and for the color, let's just go ahead and sample some of that color from our text, and then click OK again. With the ornament still selected, press Command-Control-J to duplicate it, Command-Control-T to do a free transform, and then hold the Control key, click on it, and choose Flip Horizontal. Now we can click, hold the Shift key, and move it to the opposite side. Okay, so now we're just going to grab both of those ornaments and the Brasserie text and put them into a group folder. I'll call that Brasserie. Move it above the subhead, and then you can move the subhead down below Cognac just to keep things kind of in order here. And with the subhead folder selected, I'm going to hold the Command key and select the Brasserie folder, and at the very top toolbar here, I'm going to choose this icon that says Align Horizontal Centers, alright, just to make sure that everything is nice and centered. Maybe tap it up a few times. You can move the Cognac text down a little bit just to allow for a little bit of breathing room here. We don't want our, text to be super close together and everything. And then we can just tap that down a little bit more. And once you're happy with the size and placement of everything, all we need to do is press Command-Control-S on the keyboard to save it, and then Command-Control-W to close the window once that's done. And you should see everything updated and applied to our main mockup file. Alright, there you go guys. We have now completed our Brasserie Cognac ad in Photoshop. So as you can see, we had worked with a free template that we customized and made it the way that we want just by tweaking a few things and setting it up. We've added some really nice textures, decorative elements and borders, and then we went in and we adjusted our label using actions and layer styles to create this cool looking effect. You still have time to check out the Creative's Ultimate Vintage Collection, which features a massive array of retro fonts, beautifully preserved illustrations, vintage papers, effects, textures, and a lot more. So it's a really great bundle that you guys should definitely check out to add a cool retro vintage feel to any of your designs in a matter of minutes. So hopefully you guys picked up some new tips and tricks throughout this tutorial today. As always, please go ahead and share any of your work or your results with us, as we would love to see what you guys do with this in your own work. Thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Eric Vasquez, and we'll see you next time.